The days since Sarah had been found were a blur of statements, reports, and sleepless nights. The official story was that Bill Thompson had suffered a psychotic break, became fixated on the cold cases from the 60s, and murdered Daniel Cobb as part of some delusional ritual. Case closed. The town of Millfield could breathe easy once more. But Sarah knew better. She'd seen the truth in Bill's eyes in those final moments, and had heard the dark certainty in his voice. Millfield hid a secret, one written in blood and shadow. And though Bill was dead, Sarah knew with grim certainty he wasn't the only one guarding it. She threw herself into research, scouring historical records and online forums for any scrap of information that might shed some light on the mystery. She read and read until late at night, delving into ancient texts and obscure mythologies, trying to find some sort of meaning in the half-glimpsed horrors that Bill had hinted at. Repeatedly, the name Nihilex was whispered in connection with eldritch rites and unspeakable sacrifices. A being from beyond the stars, sleeping under the earth, waiting to be woken by the spilled blood of the innocent. Was this the ancient one Bill had spoken of? He and all others like him had pledged their lives and atrocities to. But hard answers eluded her, truth slipping through her fingers like wisps of fog. In the daylight, the bustle of the police station around her, Sarah could almost convince herself it had all been some sick fantasy, the product of trauma and overwork. Almost. Until the second body was found. She looked down at the corpse, spread out in the middle of a familiar clearing, her heart a heavy weight in her chest. It was Ashley Sutton, the pretty librarian who had been so forthright about Daniel's research. Her throat cut, her bare torso carved with those same twisted geometries that had adorned Daniel's body. "This is a message," Sheriff Briggs said grimly, his face pale beneath the brim of his hat. "Whoever did this, they're telling us to back off." She crouched down, examining the runes cut into the cooling flesh. The wounds were too precise, too ritualized to be a mere copycat. No, this was the same killer, the same dark purpose. Bill had accomplices. People who shared his beliefs, his mission. With him gone, they must be trying to continue his work. Briggs scrubbed a hand over his jaw, rough and stubbled. Jesus, how many of them do you think there are? I don't know. What I know is that they won't stop. Not until they have reached whatever demented goal they're after, Sarah said, standing up with a hard-set face. We need to find them, Sheriff. Stop them before they can kill them. But even as she said it, Sarah could feel the pressure of shadows bearing down around her, those eyes in the darkness, old and insatiable. Those whispers in the back of her mind, blood and madness. In a place deep down that she dared not acknowledge, Sarah feared that maybe they were already too late. The wheels of a horrific plan had been set in motion. All that she did would be for naught against the momentum of an evil centuries in the making. Still, she had to try. For Daniel, for Ashley, for all the innocent lives she feared would be lost if she didn't find a way to stem the tide of darkness rising beneath Millfield's quiet streets. It consumed all her time. She interviewed witnesses, followed up leads, went into the backgrounds of everyone remotely related to the victims. The trail always led to mist, and the suspects always had ironclad alibis. Like smoke, killers would slip through her fingers and elude her grasp, never to be found. The murmurs grew ever louder. The shadows grew darker. Her dreams were haunted by visions of blood and stone, of twisted forms writhing in the darkness below the earth. She woke soaked in sweat and trembling, mouth filled with the taste of blood. She knew with a certainty that transcended reason, time was running out. The servitors of those ancient things were on the brink of something world-shattering. Every instinct in her screamed to run, to flee this cursed town and its eldritch secrets before she, too, could be swallowed by the gathering dark. But she wouldn't. Not when there was still the slightest chance of preventing the horrors that were to ensue. So Sarah soldiered on, even as the shadows lengthened and the weight of unseen eyes bore down upon her, and found the third body and the fourth, each more grotesque than the last. She pored over ancient texts, followed up whispered rumors, bargained, and threatened for scraps of forbidden lore. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a picture of cyclopean horror that threatened to shatter her sanity. For what lay asleep underneath Millfield was so much more than a cult's dark god. It was a piece of primordial chaos, an eldritch intelligence from the unfathomed depths of the universe. A seed of taint upon the earth eons ago, waiting for the time when the stars would align once more and the sealed gate be thrown open. The murders, the rituals, they were all in service of this impending apocalypse. Every drop of spilled blood weakened the barriers a little more, eased open the metaphysical locks trapping the ancient ones in their Stygian prison. Now the locks were straining, the very air humming with the dissonant resonance of their imminent failure. Sarah could feel it in her bones, see it in the shadows that twisted in ways that defied physics. The veil was thinning, the darkness pushed through. When the next body was found, spread-eagled in the center of town as if in mocking invitation, Sarah knew the end was upon them. The runes on the disemboweled torso were a message, a promise of the horrors yet to come. The final seal was broken, the way was open, and all of Millfield would be the sacrifice to usher in a new age of eldritch nightmares. Standing at the edge of the abyss, Sarah felt how heavily the gun on her hip weighed. This knew, however, that it was the only thing standing between this world and the horrors that lurked over the threshold. What could one mortal woman do against such primordial evil? What hope did she have of stemming this overwhelming tide of shadows? Tired, so hollow, the gales of truth she caught sight of in the darkness, the temptation was to give in to the madness that would take her. This was a siren song in her blood. But she couldn't. For the sake of every innocent soul who didn't know the end coming their way, she had to fight, even if it cost her soul and sanity. Sarah Reeves squared her shoulders, checked her ammunition, and stepped out into the unnatural twilight settling over Millfield. Out to meet her destiny, good or ill. The shadows twisted in anticipation. The ancients were roused from their faded dreams. And lastly, Sarah's final thought as the darkness surged up to claim her was that at least she had met this horror on her terms. At least she had gone down fighting, even though in the end it turned out to be all for nothing. The end?